After about 14 hours of claims and counterclaims Friday up to news time, the Senate was still deliberating the controversial National Identification Bill.
This has forced the government to call a press briefing for tomorrow to clarify what it says is misinformation about the new law.
The bill paves the way for all Jamaicans to have a national identification card, and to get it, you have to give the state personal and biometric data, including your name, where you live, signature, fingerprint, retina scan, vein pattern, and blood type.
It turns out that the pattern of veins in your hand is just as unique to you as the pattern of skin on your fingertip. In this setup, the system is used to verify identity, to prove that you are who you say you are.
This sensor detects the palm vein pattern by using infrared illumination.
The module shines near-infrared light onto a person's hand. The deoxygenated blood in the veins absorbs the near-infrared light, while the rest of the hand lets the light pass through. A sensor in the module records the image of the hand, where the veins show up as dark lines. Then a software program compares the image against the template on record for that individual. In this system, you have stored a template of your palm veins, yes? Then the program announces whether or not there is a match. So that shows access denied. Thank you. Your vein pattern is also a more secure identifier than your fingerprints, which can be lifted from any smooth surface and reproduced. Because your veins are inside your palm, no one can see or copy them. In Japan, many banks already use vein scanning technology as an added security measure in their ATMs. Shinzaki also showed me the company's next-generation biometric identification system, which uses both palm veins and fingerprints.
So when I press my hand on this sensor, 3 fingerprints and 1 palm vein pattern will be captured.
This system doesn't just verify that you are who you say you are. The extra biometric data allows it to pluck your identity from a database containing millions of records. One day, this could allow a customer in a shop to buy a magazine just by placing his hand on a sensor. And the R&D lab is still experimenting with new imaging systems that could be used for more precise identification. For IEEE Spectrum, I'm Eliza Strickland.
TVJ's Andrea Chisholm has details of today's special sitting of the Senate.
Defend the citizens of this country and don't sell them out. We're selling them out for $68 million loan US.
Senator
and we're
Brown.
selling them out again
Senator
with
Brown.
this legislation.
Senator
Opposition Senator Lambert Brown, as the Upper House continued its clause-by-clause analysis of the National Identification and Registration Act. Clause 20, Section 1 of the bill makes it clear that every Jamaican shall be part of the database. Opposition senators want Jamaicans to have a choice by replacing the word shall with may.
There's a review process after 18 months, and we use public education, persuasion, and other means to get a buy-in from the public in a non-mandatory way, and during the review process we can assess where we are.
But Leader of Government Business in the Senate, Camilla Johnson-Smith, argued that if it's not mandatory, the National Identification System NIDS would not work.
But I've structured the bill in a way that all the clauses do not come into effect at the same time, so that we can properly phase not only the rollout and education, but also when it is that there will be any effective penalty.
In the end, the changes proposed by the opposition were not accepted. The mandatory provision remains. There was also a timeline for implementation. Mrs. Johnson-Smith says over the next 12 months, the infrastructure will be put in place. The pilot project will begin in January 2019, and the full rollout will begin in September 2019 over a 3 to 4 year period. Government senators also rejected calls for that timeline to be inserted in the law. And the disagreements continued, this time Clause 20, Section 9. It essentially states that if one refuses or fails to enroll in the database without reasonable excuse, they shall be liable for conviction. If convicted in the parish court, the penalty is a fine not exceeding $100,000.
What is without reasonable excuse? Would that include religion?
if it includes religion, is that religion as accepted by the law, or as is practiced, or as is popular, or as is perceived?
It is that very breadth that makes it very valuable to the citizen. I would leave it like that, and it can encompass any reasonable excuse.
There was also an issue with Section 30, which states that the national identification card remains the property of the state. Opposition Senator K.D. Knight wanted to add something to that sentence.
However, it shall not be taken without due process. Aye.
Andrea Chisholm, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, several groups, including members of civil society, turned up at Gordon House today as the Senate continues its review of the National Identification and Registration Bill. As TVJ's Vashon Brown reports, some groups are still opposed to the bill.
A small group of people gathered outside Parliament on Monday afternoon to protest against the National ID Bill, now before the Upper House. The group included representatives from the Marcus Garvey People's Political Party.
What is behind all this? This haste to pass this bill. We are reminded by Revelations 13, the 666, the mark of the beast, when you cannot buy nor sell. So we are saying, if England, Australia, India, and other greater nations than us have rejected this system, then who are we to accept it? Are we the guinea pigs?
As well as the Paul Bogle Foundation.
There's no way the Parliament of Jamaica should find time to be considering something like this.
Other groups like Jamaicans for Justice, JFJ, have been closely watching the discussions in the Senate. Advocacy Manager at JFJ, Roger Malcolm, says his organization has been working with the government on the National ID Bill since June, so JFJ does not oppose the bill.
A peaceful